What's up, guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Alicia Nicole, and I just want to thank you for joining me for another episode of AD's RX for MD. I want to talk to you guys today just about how I have been preparing for step 1 leading up until now, just to give you some context. Next week is our last week of classes, and then the week after that we have OSCEs, and then it's dedicated. Like, by the time you see this video, I think I'm going to be within my dedicated study period, but I do want to talk about basically how I prepared for dedicated as a second-year med student. I am going to share with you the study plan that I'm planning on using, and I'm going to share how I came about that plan. So first, I want to talk about incorporating practice questions. So I think practice questions should be utilized all throughout your med school journey. And I do have a video on some of the question banks that I like and how I use them, because I use them all differently. But two of the ones I really like are usmle RX and uWorld. I have been using those questions religiously all throughout my second year. First year was really kind of hectic because it was like, let me try this and see if it works, let me try that and see if it works, let me try, and I wasn't in a serious routine. Well, I purchased uWorld at the beginning of this year. Now, some people will say like, oh, you shouldn't use any uWorld questions until your dedicated study period, you need to save them all for dedicated. I personally disagree with that, but everyone has to make the decision that's best for them. The reason why I disagree is because it's like 3,700 questions. And if it's definitely a good idea to try to get through every single question, trying to do 3,700 questions in a 4 to 6 week period is going to be exhausting. A proper review session, like test and review session of 40 questions, can easily take like 3 hours. But also, I wanted to start training myself early to think in the way that the step exam is going to require me to think. So basically, for me, my goal for each module was to get through 10 uWorld questions a day. Then, leading up to each mini board, I would then try to do a set of 40 questions. So I bring up Boards and Beyond because one of the things that I did specifically beginning this year, started annotating first aid, and I would really recommend you actually start doing this your first year. And basically how I do this is every time that so like the day before a lecture is given, I will look ahead at the material. I will find the videos in Boards and Beyond that cover that material. I will watch that material with first aid in front of me, and I will write in first aid next to whatever it is they're talking about anything additional mentioned in Boards and Beyond that helps clarify that topic for me. These notes are going to be helpful for me during my dedicated study because I use Sketchy, I use Boards and Beyond. Sometimes I use usmle RX videos. Sometimes I use Pathoma. And so if there's a certain fact that you're like, I kind of remember part of it, but it's a little blurry and I need to review it again, now you have to go through those 4 resources, which takes a lot more time, versus if you write all that stuff down in first aid, everything that you found high yield and helpful is right there in the book. So now I want to get into the part of the video where I'm actually going to share my study plan with you, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how I went about creating that study plan. So the first thing that I did was I looked in first aid and I just kind of, I wrote out all of the topics that are in first aid. Now, first aid, I think I actually have it with me. Yes. So first aid is organized in 2 different ways. First, there's the subjects. So for example, there's a biochemistry subject, and I went ahead and put these little tabs on here to just help make it easier. There's immunology, there's microbiology. When you go through that portion of the book, essentially, like let's say we're in pharmacology, you'll just go over all things drugs, and it'll be across all organ systems. And that works for some people. Some people like to organize things in that way. But first aid is also organized into organ systems. So we have like neurology up here, this blue tab. We have psychiatry, renal, reproductive, all of that. Personally, I do better when I go over an entire organ system and I learn all of the subjects within that system. So I'm in cardio and I learned the pharmacology for cardio. I learned the pathology for cardio. I learned the anatomy and physiology. So that works a lot better for me. So I chose to organize it that way, and I'm going to show you all of this stuff. So let me actually switch to my computer. I thought it would just be easier to kind of explain this all to you with it in front of you. So the first thing I did was I went through first aid and Boards and Beyond actually, and I looked at the topics that were listed there, and then I just kind of organized them and color coded them based on how comfortable I feel with them. So I mentioned earlier that I prefer really to go organ system by organ system, but there are a few exceptions to that, and that's what you see down here. So biochemistry is so foundational to all of the organ systems, and a lot of times what you learn can be applied in each organ system, that for me it's actually easier to just learn the basics of biochemistry and then jog my memory as to how it's applied within each system. So everything that's in red is something that I feel I've just forgotten a lot and I need to spend a lot of time reviewing. Everything that's in orange is like, I'm so on it. I'm not as uncomfortable as I am with these items, but I'm not necessarily comfortable. Yellow is that material is relatively recent, or it was material that came to me a little bit easier, and so I feel like jogging my memory will go well. And then green is I feel pretty comfortable about this. So the way I pretty much determined this, and you can probably see the pattern, is, and I made this a while ago. So my plan was, since neurology, psych, and hematology and oncology were the last modules that I would be doing, I figured, I'm going to keep that knowledge pretty fresh. And so I'm not going to need to go back and look at a lot of videos to review that content. This is material from last semester. And honestly, looking back, I should have kept this material a little bit more current than I did. I should have kept it in my Anki rotation, and I didn't. But for the last couple of weeks, I've been bringing back repro and endocrine as well as respiratory. So we're going to see how it goes. So anyway, after I labeled these as like most difficult to least difficult, I basically put them in the order. And so the things that I feel very uncomfortable with are the things that I want to tackle first, and I'm most likely going to need to do some content review. And that's another thing. So when it comes to step prep, there's content review, and then there's your active learning, which would be like things like Anki or practice questions. Now, some people will tell you don't even spend any time on content review, is not worth it, but you have to know yourself, and I know myself, and I know for a fact I have to do some content review. But I do agree with people who say you need to spend the majority of your time doing practice questions. So I want to minimize my content review as much as possible. So the next thing that I did here was I put in the amount of time that it'll take me to get through this whole subject if I look at all of the Boards and Beyond videos. Now, some of this stuff is represented elsewhere. So this is unique to Boards and Beyond. Now, I don't really plan to do Boards and Beyond microbiology just because I felt like that is so well done by Sketchy that I'm just going to use Sketchy to do that material. But I just listed everything out here for the sake of completeness. Then this adjusted hours minutes is basically based on how fast I think I can watch this content. So in this, so this K5 divided by 1.5 means that my plan is to watch this at 1.5 speed. The reason why I'm doing that is because this is all material that I've seen before. I'm not learning it, I'm reviewing it. Pathoma. So a lot of people will say you need to get through the whole Pathoma book, and I would say, again, everyone needs to do what they think is best for them and what they have the most time for. I had a lot of people at my school in the class ahead of me that said they really didn't see much from Pathoma except the material that was covered in the first 3 chapters. So I could be taking a gamble, but my plan is really only to incorporate these first 3 chapters because they're very foundational to everything else. Over here, I have a list of all of the UWorld questions. There's 3,700 questions. And this is, I'm not going to get into how I did this because this is more so how to use Excel. But essentially, I was able to create a spreadsheet that'll tell me like how many questions I will be able to get through by a certain date, how many questions I need to do a day, that kind of stuff. Then we have Sketchy. I knew for Sketchy that I wanted to get through all of the drugs again. There's some that I never really watched just because, again, first year was all about survival. I had not established a regular routine. So there were some drugs and things that I never looked at the Sketchy videos for. And I want to at least see them once. But really the big thing for me is using Anki to review that material. I'm right now just sharing with you, this is my plan and this is how I came up with this plan and why I came up with this plan. Okay, so after I had established everything that I wanted to get done, everything that I wanted to review, I then decided from the date that I made this, so I made this in the fall, I then decided to take account of every break that I had in between the day that I made it and the day that I was planning on taking the exam. Now, when I made the schedule, I didn't know what date I was going to take the exam. I just knew that our school wanted us to have it done by June 12th. And so I was like, I'll probably get it done somewhere around, the end of May or the beginning of June, because I wanted to have some time off before third year started. So now that I know my test day, I have it on here. But initially, I just kind of took it to the end of May and was like, we'll figure it out. Personally, I wanted to have 6 to 7 weeks of dedicated study, which you see I have accounted for. So the reason why I decided to list out all breaks that I had between then and dedicated was because I knew that I wanted to do content review, and I wanted to do as much of it as possible before dedicated so that I could spend most of my dedicated doing practice questions. So this is now kind of a callback to the material that's over here. So the things that are in red are the things that I want to kind of get through first. So public health is super, super, super blurry for me. So I was like, I really want to get through that material. And this was material that I had assigned for myself for Christmas break. Now, one thing I do want to say is whatever plan you're going to come up with, it's really helpful to come up with it early, because just in case things don't go according to plan, you still have a lot of time to work it out. So for example, I had put some things actually up here, which was my Thanksgiving break. All of these things were up here, and I didn't do them because my break was so short and I just wanted to spend time with my family. But the fact that I had made this schedule so far in advance, I was able to just move it down here, and I was actually able to get those things done over my Christmas break. And so you see I had sketchy micro, sketchy farm, like everything's just kind of been assigned a date so that I can start preparing gradually and not have to overload myself at the end. So now let's get into the meat of dedicated. So basically I have from Sunday, April 16th, all the way to Friday, May 26th. And there's actually a few extra days in there. So I've placed those items in here from I've placed them here from material that I know the least of to material that I'm a little bit more familiar with, because this is the priority. These red subjects are the priority for me. I've also assigned questions. So these columns are UWorld questions. And as you can see, early in my dedicated, I plan to do both sets of subject-based questions and mixed questions. The reason why I'm doing subject-based is because on the day that I watch my biochemistry videos, I want to really hammer that in and solidify it. So I'm going to do 40 biochemistry questions. And I'm also going to be doing Anki at that time. But I also understand that it's really important to do mixed set questions, because that's what STEP looks like. And if you do isolated questions within an organ system, sometimes you can get content correct just because you know what organ system you're in and not because you actually knew it. Now, the plan is once I get done with these videos to just do all mixed set questions. Okay? And pretty much that's what I plan to do from weeks 3 through weeks 6. And I just kind of divided the questions up so that I could get through almost all of them before I took STEP. And over here I have, this is also tentative, but just a proposed schedule for these first few weeks to get through everything that I want to do. So there's that. That's my little schedule. Alright guys, we are approaching the end of this video. There's a few things that I just want to put out there. So the resources that I am planning on using are UWorld, Anki, Boards and Beyond, Pathoma, and Sketchy. Overall tips that I would give for anyone that's trying to make their study plan would be definitely make sure you start early, because that gives you the most flexibility in rearranging the schedule if you need to. I would also say if you are going to assign tasks to yourself during breaks, be reasonable about how much you think you're actually gonna have the capacity to do. If you're a first year med student and you're feeling like there's no way I'm gonna learn all this material and remember all this material, it's just impossible. Like, it's not. I know where you are right now because I know how I felt at the end of the first year. And I'm not saying like, oh, I'm ready for STEP, I'm gonna crush it right here, right now. But what I am saying is that I've noticed that as I have grown as a student and as my clinical knowledge has expanded, when certain subjects or there's certain like motifs that repeat over and over in medicine, and they're very important. And over time, the more you see them, the more they come back up, the stronger the connection will be in your head about what that is and what it means and what the significance is. I promise you, come second year, you're gonna start making some correlations to things that you were taught in first year, and it's gonna come more naturally than it does right now. So that's pretty much all I have to say for now. I'm definitely going to try to do a vlog during my dedicated study. I don't know, it depends on how stressed I am and how well I'm able to stick to my schedule. But definitely stay tuned for that video. After I have like my step results and all that stuff, I'm definitely gonna keep you guys updated. Anyone who's been there, done that, and has any other tips they wanna leave, absolutely leave them. I am in no way an expert. I'm just sharing my opinion with you guys and how I've chosen to kind of plan my dedicated study for step 1. So thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.